Hello, dear audience. If you're listening to this right now, your heart is also searching for warmth amidst the noise of the world out there. Thank you for stopping by. Just a few minutes, that's all I ask. To hear a story with no magic, no miracles, just a blind man and an old dog past their prime. But their bond proves that goodness still lives quietly among us. And if this story touches something inside you, please consider subscribing. Your support gives me the strength to keep telling stories like this. Stories of trust, loyalty, and the kind of silent friendship that needs no words. San Eladio is a quiet little town tucked beneath the western mountains. Each morning begins with the sound of the church bell and the smell of fresh bread drifting from Widow Magda's bakery. People know each other by name, and the simple greetings soften the loneliness here exchanged along cobblestone streets. Lucas Martin lives at the end of one such street where the morning sun spills directly onto the ivy-covered porch of his small wooden home. It's been nearly 6 years since he lost his sight, and with it, the only woman who ever made his coffee just right. Since then, Lucas's world has been painted with sound and memory alone, but he is not alone. At his side is Bruno, a retired German shepherd who once served in the city's canine police unit. Bruno used to charge into danger to protect others, until one mission left him badly injured and forced into early retirement. Some said a dog that couldn't run like before had no value. Lucas never believed that. He adopted Bruno from the rehabilitation center. Lucas couldn't see the dog's intense, steady eyes, but he felt it in the even rhythm of his steps, the warm breath at his side, and the way Bruno would nudge his knee when something wasn't right. Every morning, Lucas sits on his porch with a cup of tea, head tilted slightly, as if listening to something the rest of us can't hear. The wind rustled the leaves. The paperboy's shoes are on the curb, and Bruno, ever loyal, sits by his feet. His eyes scan the street ahead, ears perked as if standing guard over the world. No words are exchanged, but that silence is a language only they understand. A man who has lost his sight, and a poem who once lost his purpose. To passers-by, they are just an old blind man and his dog. But to Lucas, Bruno is more than a guide. He is a living memory, a second pair of eyes, a second heartbeat. That pulses whenever loneliness threatens to return. Lucas once told a neighbor, "I don't see the sunrise anymore, but I know when it does because Bruno always finds a patch of sunlight and lays there first." San Eladio remained peaceful until it wasn't. Lately, strange sounds began to break the sleepy rhythm of the town. Not the occasional honk or the hum of street musicians, but the sharp growl of motorcycle engines, loud, aggressive, and wrong, echoed through the plaza like a warning. No one dared speak. 3 strangers had started showing up. They said nothing, rode sleek, black Harleys, wore sunglasses that never came off, circled the town square, slowly for a town used to bicycles and slow footsteps. Their presence was like ink bleeding through a glass of warm milk, people whispered. No one acted. The town had no full-time police, just a distant outpost a few miles away. To outsiders, these men might have looked like passing tourists, but the locals sensed something off. Lucas heard it too, not with his eyes, but with hearing, sharpened by years of darkness. And he wasn't the only one, Bruno changed. Every time the engines roared in the distance, he'd get up, leave his spot, and walk to the porch edge. He wouldn't bark, but his body would stiffen like a drawn bow, watching, waiting. Then it came closer. That Sunday morning was unnaturally clear. Lucas sat at the Café La Esquina, as always, with a cup of mint tea and Bruno under the table. The breeze carried hints of lavender from the church garden, but peace didn't last. The engines arrived, growing louder with every second. Heads turned, and then they appeared. 3 men in leather walking with no intention to order anything. The one in front had a buzz cut, a neck tattoo, and an air of smug control. His name was Silas. Silas scanned the cafe crowd, then stopped at Lucas, a blind older man, a big dog that looked asleep. To Silas, it was the perfect setup for a show of dominance. He walked up, smirked, and sat across from Lucas without asking. Lucas turned toward the sound face, calm. "Good morning," he said, polite. "As always," Silas replied, stretching the words out like a sneer. "Morning, old man. That big mutt yours." Lucas gave a slight nod. His name is Bruno. Silas crouched slightly, tapping his knee in an attempt to draw attention. "Bruno, huh? I've seen plenty of dogs, but none that sit as still as a statue like this one." Bruno opened his eyes. He didn't move, but his ears were now upright. "What's wrong with him? Is he broken? Or is he just decoration?" Silas continued, his voice laced with mockery. A few people in the cafe had begun to glance over. Lucas remained calm. He's working, and he knows exactly when it's time to get up. Oh yeah, working, what's he do? Sniff croissants. Silas chuckled derisively and reached out, aiming to pat Bruno's head, as you would with any pet, but he never got the chance. Bruno sprang up in a flash, no growl, no bark, no attack, just a silent stance positioned squarely between Lucas and the stranger, eyes locked on Silas. The fur along his spine stood straight. Silas flinched, stepping back. The cockiness vanished. At that moment, something in Bruno's unwavering stare told him that this was no ordinary dog. A regular customer stood up and said quietly, "You probably shouldn't mess with him. That dog used to be canine. He saved real lives." Silas flushed, forcing a laugh. "Just messing around, no harm done." "Relax, old man." Lucas said nothing, but his hand reached out and gently rested on Bruno's head, his voice barely a whisper, audible only to the dog. "Well done, old friend." Silas turned away, but the atmosphere had already shifted. Eyes followed him as he exited, heavy and unwelcoming. After a few moments of standing watch, Bruno finally lay back down, but his eyes remained open. Lucas exhaled slowly. He didn't need to see to know something had begun. The Café La Esquina remained silent after the encounter. Coffee cups were still cradled in hands, but no one was drinking. Conversations had stopped mid-sentence. The air was tight with unspoken tension. Bruno, however, wasn't done. The German shepherd didn't look away, even as Silas disappeared down the street. No bark, no lunge. Just those deep brown eyes, steady and unblinking. It wasn't the reaction of a body startled or anxious. It was the calculated presence of a soldier. Lucas gently stroked the rigid muscles along Bruno's back. His hand trembled slightly. "Easy now, Bruno," he murmured, his voice calm but edged with concern. He didn't need sight to know what was stirring inside his companion. Probably just the noise a woman at the next table offered, trying to lighten the mood. "You know, dogs, sometimes they overreact." An older man nodded. "Maybe he caught a whiff of something odd. Perfume, maybe. It's nothing." Lucas heard them all, but unease settled heavily in his chest. Bruno wasn't a dog that overreacted. In 3 years together, he had not responded this way unless there was reason. Lucas remembered the night Bruno woke him because someone had been standing outside too long, or the day he refused to enter the park because the wind was off hours before a tree fell. There, his instincts had never failed. And now people thought Bruno was on edge, but deep inside Lucas felt something more serious lurking beneath the surface. Bruno didn't lie down. He stepped closer to Lucas, pressing against his leg, still alert. His chest rose and fell rapidly. Ears focused on the direction Silas had gone. Whenever someone laughed too loudly or shoes clacked against the tile, Bruno let out a low growl. Not loud, but unmistakable. Lucas tried to hide his worry. He didn't want to appear frail or blow things out of proportion, but every muscle in his arm where Bruno leaned tightened with the dog's breath. The tension passed through him like a quiet current of warning. "Maybe we should head home," Lucas murmured, reaching for his cane. Bruno stood at once, posture still rigid. No one stopped them, but several eyes followed, as if silently saying, "Take care, Mr. Lucas. It's probably nothing. Probably nothing." Lucas turned that phrase over in his mind. He'd lived long enough to know that probably nothing often became the start of something far worse. That afternoon, Lucas sat in his usual chair on the porch, trying to read the sounds of the world like an open book. But Bruno didn't rest. The dog paced the porch, sniffing corners, pausing often to gaze out toward the road, as if expecting something to return. Lucas whispered, "Is there something I'm not seeing, old friend?" Bruno did not answer. Of course not. But instead of curling up to sleep, he positioned himself right in front of the door, eyes fixed on the quiet street like a lone sentinel at his post. The sunset cast a warm glow on his dark fur, outlining a silhouette of quiet strength and unspoken purpose. Lucas leaned on his cane, head bowed slightly. His heart felt heavy. No one believed Bruno, but Lucas didn't need proof. He trusted him. Always had, always would. Because when a dog like Bruno, a soul who had once stared danger in the face, who had leaped into the darkness to save lives when he growls even just once, something is coming. And Lucas knew that his own eyes no longer saw the world. But Bruno's eyes were wide open, watching the darkness approach. Nights in San Eladio were usually peaceful. No honking horns, no hurried footsteps, just the whisper of wind through old tree canopies and the constant lull of insects humming against the worn cobblestone roads. But that night was different. Lucas. Martin sat in his usual chair by the window as he did every night. His fingers gently traced the edge of a braille book he hadn't finished. Though his mind drifted into a silence too vast to name, Bruno lay beside him, head resting on his front paws. Quiet, almost too calm, until Lucas heard the footsteps. At first he thought he imagined it, but then came the unmistakable crunch of gravel under someone's shoes. One step, then another. Not hurried, not casual, but cautious. Lucas leaned forward, heart starting to pound. He had never heard anyone walking around his yard this late. He tried to reassure himself for a few seconds. Maybe it was just a neighbor searching for a lost cat. But then he felt it, the change in Bruno. The dog hadn't moved, not really. But he was no longer relaxed, his body tensed slightly. Shoulders pulled in, ears are fully upright. No barking, no growling, not a sound. And that silence, that was what sent a chill down Lucas's spine. Bruno had been trained under canine protocols not to react on instinct. He didn't bite because of the noise. He didn't bark just from a passing shadow. With Bruno, everything was calculated, and when the threat level crossed the threshold, he gave a signal. That signal was coming. Lucas gently set down the book and stood up slowly. He reached for the cane beside his chair, but before he could step toward the door, Bruno was already there, standing firm like a stone wall. His deep brown eyes were locked on the front door. Unblinking, his ears tilted slightly toward the left side of the house, toward the sound sneaking closer. Lucas whispered, "Is someone out there, Bruno?" The dog didn't answer. Instead, he stepped toward Lucas and pressed his nose gently against the man's knee. A small gesture. It's so light that anyone else might miss it, but for Lucas, it was as clear as a fire alarm. In training, Bruno had been taught to give silent alerts. The nose-to-knee tap that was level 3, the highest threat level. No hesitation now. Lucas backed up, fumbling for his phone. His hands were trembling. "1-1," he said, voice low but urgent. "I'm visually impaired. There's someone outside my house. My dog just gave an emergency alert." The dispatcher asked for his address and told him to stay inside and lock the doors. But Lucas knew a lock wouldn't stop someone with intent. He placed a hand on Bruno's back, steadying them both like an unspoken ritual. Outside, the footsteps stopped, but the danger hadn't left. Lucas whispered, "Left window, right." Bruno didn't move, but his ears swiveled in that direction. The answer was clear. The house fell silent. Time stretched. Then, a metallic click. Someone is trying a latch. Lucas gripped his cane tighter. Bruno leaned forward, muscles taut, coiled like a spring. Moments passed, then came the bark. One loud, firm bark, not in rage, but the final warning. Footsteps sprinted across the yard. Lucas held onto Bruno's leash, retreating a few steps. "Bruno, stay." 2 words enough. Bruno understood. Protect first. A few minutes later, the whine of police sirens echoed down the road. Headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the porch. And there they stood. One older man, one 4-legged sentinel, facing the night together. Officers searched the perimeter and found boot prints near the left window, and a folding knife dropped just beneath it. No arrests were made, but the intent was obvious. A young officer turned to Lucas. "How did you know someone was out here so early?" Lucas smiled softly, patting Bruno's head. "I didn't." He looked toward the dog, but he always does. A cruiser idled before Lucas's porch as dawn threatened the sky's edge. Its beams swept across the house, casting a tall shadow of Bruno alert. Steadfast ears raised like antennae, listening for danger, still out there. Waiting, 3 officers stepped out of their patrol cars, scanning the perimeter of Lucas's modest home. One shone his flashlight toward the side window, where Lucas had reported hearing noises, and spotted a faint shoe print pressed into the damp earth. Nearby, a partially crushed cigarette butt lay hidden among the grass. "We'll collect the samples," the senior officer informed Lucas, "but it's not enough to identify a suspect." Lucas nodded slowly, his hand resting gently on Bruno's back. He held no resentment. The officers were following protocol. Yet both he and Bruno knew who had been there. A few hours later, as the sun rose over San Eladio, Lucas received a call from the local police chief. They had brought Silas in for questioning. The man arrived with a smug demeanor, his tone laced with contempt. "Me, last night," Silas sneered. "I was at a friend's place, got witnesses, even cameras. I don't have time to mess with some blind old man and his broken mutt." The officer took notes in silence. Silas continued, his voice turning venomous. If you ask me, that blind guy's the real problem. Making up stories obsessed. And that dog, it's dangerous. Something's wrong with it. One day it'll bite someone. Then you'll remember I warned you. No one responded, but Lucas sensed the shift, though he hadn't heard the conversation in full. His instincts told him Silas wasn't denying involvement. He was attempting to twist the narrative. Bruno lay at Lucas's feet as he listened to the police chief's report. The dog remained silent, but his deep brown eyes betrayed tension. It was as if he understood this battle wasn't over. Justice wouldn't come swiftly, and the truth might not prevail immediately. Lucas gently stroked Bruno's neck. We can't rely on evidence alone, he whispered. But we have each other, and if he returns next time, there won't be just a warning. Bruno didn't growl. He gave a subtle nod, a silent promise. The night air slipped through the window frame, carrying an unusual chill. Lucas Martin tried to drift into a restless sleep within his familiar home. But Bruno remained vigilant. The German shepherd lay by the door, ears perked, eyes wide open. Near midnight, a sound only Bruno could detect echoed a motorcycle engine at the far end of the street. Unlike previous times, the roar halted right outside the gate. Bruno sprang to his feet, his posture shifting. Instantly, tense-focused, a familiar scent seeped through the doorframe, gasoline pungent and unmistakable outside. Silas and two other bikers approached stealthily. One carried a gasoline canister. Another retrieved a metal rod from his backpack, beginning to pry at the side window. Their whispers revealed their intent to set the house ablaze. Not to kill Lucas, but to intimidate him into silence about their illicit activities disguised within the neighborhood. Inside, Bruno didn't bark. Instead, he rushed to Lucas's bedroom door, pounding it with his front paws. Once, twice. The forceful thuds jolted Lucas awake. Bruno, he called softly. Without waiting, Bruno dashed to the small wooden cabinet beneath the stairs, where the emergency alarm system insisted upon by Lucas's late wife was concealed. Lucas hurried over his fingers, searching for the raised SOS switch. He flipped it. The entire house vibrated momentarily. A piercing alarm blared and emergency lights flashed crimson. At the police station a few blocks away, the signal was received instantly. Meanwhile, Bruno didn't wait. He bolted through the back door, navigating the narrow path between houses, a route he knew by heart. His form sliced through the night air like an arrow. The biker with the gasoline hadn't yet poured it when nearly 90 pounds of canine force collided with him. From the side, Bruno didn't bite or injure him, but pinned him to the ground, placing a firm paw on his chest. Eyes locked onto his Silas, and the third biker froze in the shadows. Back off, Silas shouted, attempting to pull his comrade free. Bruno responded with a low, chilling growl, a controlled fury. In the distance, police sirens wailed, growing louder. Red and blue lights pierced the darkness. Silas cursed, tossing the gasoline canister aside before fleeing into the alley. The other followed, but the one beneath Bruno remained immobilized. Lucas stood behind Bruno, trembling cane in hand, absorbing the scene with bated breath. Bruno, he whispered. The dog glanced back, his eyes conveying assurance it was under control. By the time officers arrived, the situation was contained. The biker lay subdued, wrist cuffed. The gasoline canister, metal rod, and footprints served as clear evidence. An officer knelt beside Bruno, exclaiming, "This dog, he's a true hero." Lucas approached slowly, gently patting his four-legged companion's head. He didn't attack, he said softly, he protected. Amid the flickering emergency lights and the crackle of police radios, Bruno stood tall, silent yet commanding. His shadow stretched across the pavement like the silhouette of an old soldier who never left his post. Less than 48 hours after that chaotic night, Silas and the other two men were apprehended in a major police operation. Based on the evidence collected at the scene, including footprints, the gasoline canister footage from neighborhood security cameras, and eyewitness testimonies, the authorities uncovered a drug trafficking network that had been operating right through the quiet streets of their small town. Silas wasn't just an aggressive biker. He was the coordinator of a larger interstate distribution ring, using the peaceful town of San Eladio as a blind spot, a perfect stopover to avoid the watchful eyes of the law. But they hadn't accounted for a retired dog and a blind man standing as an unbreakable wall between danger and peace. Once the truth came to light, Bruno was invited to the police department to be honored. In a modest but heartfelt ceremony, officers bowed their heads in respect as the old canine stood wearing a deep blue collar with a small badge clipped near his name tag. A young officer stepped forward, voice thick with emotion, and read the citation aloud. Bruno, the retired hero, has proven that courage does not fade with time. He protected an innocent man through instinct training and unwavering loyalty and helped expose a dangerous criminal operation. As of today, he is no longer just Lucas's dog. He is a friend to the entire town. A wave of applause filled the room, warm, sincere, and sustained. Lucas stood beside Bruno, gently tightening his grip on the leash and nodding with a soft smile. He didn't need to see the lights or the medals. He could feel the pride trembling in the chest of the four-legged friend beside him. After the ceremony, as the room slowly emptied, Lucas and Bruno returned to their familiar wooden bench on the porch, their quiet corner of the world. The late afternoon sun filtered through the leaves, casting golden patches across the old stone walkway. Lucas leaned closer, lowered his voice, and whispered into Bruno's ear, "I don't see the world the way you do, but thanks to you, I always know who to be careful of." "Thank you, old friend." Bruno didn't answer. He didn't need to. His deep brown eyes met Lucas's kind-weathered face with all the understanding words could never capture. Light cannot reach some places, but loyalty, instinct, and friendship always can. That evening passed slowly, gently. The calm footsteps of everyday life returned to the small street. People no longer looked at Bruno as just a guide dog. They saw him now as a living emblem of bravery and truth. And Lucas knew one thing. Some heroes don't wear armor. They don't carry weapons. They have a heart that never turns away. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this story. If your heart beat a little faster with every step Bruno took, and you felt the quiet warmth in Lucas's world, please hit subscribe so we can continue sharing stories that awaken compassion. Every subscription is a message. I'm here and I still believe in kindness. We'll see you in the following story.